Morning. This is just probably going to be a quick one. Somebody requested that I talk about accountability. Oops. And how empowering it is. I'll keep it related to addiction for the moment, but it covers all aspects of life. I've said it before, I think in another video, but one of the most empowering things you can do is take 100% accountability for where your life is at, in all areas, not just materialistically, as in the car you have, the job you have, the life you're living, that kind of shit, but where you're at emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and of course it's not to discredit any true mental diseases or disorders. That's another rabbit hole we'll go down later. But how it relates to, say, addiction, for example, you hear a lot of times in different recovery circles they talk about the moment of surrender. Basically, for me, what that was I finally stopped fighting myself. You spend so much of your life blaming external factors, people, places, situations, circumstances, on your well-being and where you're at. And as an addict, it's a thing that we call self-will run riot. You're constantly trying to enforce your will, like, my life would be great if everybody would just do what I say. Of course. But once you finally just stop fighting yourself, that's the first step in accountability. It's just surrender. Just throw the towel in. Okay? But then it starts to come apart in layers, like everything. No one is responsible for your happiness. Nobody but you. And for some people it's a very difficult concept to understand, because people can say things that will offend you, you'll feel disrespected, all kinds of stuff. But that's the thing, past the initial shock, it's entirely up to you. I can walk up, slap you in the face. Okay? Now, the initial shock of the action and the sting on your flesh, sure, I'm responsible for that. But how you react to it and how long you allow it to affect you is entirely up to you. Some people, that would ruin their whole day, their whole week, months even. And I've seen it. Here's a great example: road rage. I am 100% guilty of this. I can't stand idiot drivers. And it's not so much that they're idiots, it's just, and I'm guilty of it too. And people who have a low amount of spatial awareness. I heard something years ago, and it's one of the things that helped me. I don't believe in bad days, only bad moments. And it's true. Every time you react to a situation or a person, especially if you emotionally react, regardless of how that reaction comes out, regardless of whether you yell, scream, cry, shut down, doesn't matter whether it's fight, flight, or freeze. when you have that reaction, you're giving your power away. And I talked a little bit about this in Uncomfortable Silences in that video. Oh, well. Total side note, this is like the third morning in a row that I've seen a rainbow with no rain. I love the universe. Anyway, so accountability. That's one part of it, is, taking accountability for, every aspect of your life. In recovery and in addiction, it doesn't matter what it is: drugs, alcohol, gambling, work, sex, codependencies, whatever. Most of them follow a pretty basic 12-step program. I myself am very guilty of overthinking the 12 steps. The purpose of them is real simple. It's to deflate and disarm the ego, as well as to take accountability. And that's part of disarming the ego, is taking accountability and responsibility for where your life is at, how you feel, all of that stuff. No one else is responsible for your healing, just like no one else is responsible for your happiness. Nor are they responsible for your sadness or your misery or your hurt. And it's very difficult to accept. But once you do, it is the absolute most empowering thing you can do. Because you take back all your power. Nobody now has control over you. Nobody can say something to you and make you cry anymore, because no, you don't have that kind of power over me. Sorry. Nice try, but no. It sounds simple. Of course it's difficult. Healing hurts. And this is not something that usually happens overnight. I've been struggling with this for years. No, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. Ironically, that's the funny thing. That's what makes us all perfect, is the fact that we're all imperfect. Beauty in the chaos. This rainbow's awesome. Anyway, so yeah, accountability. It really is an extremely empowering thing. I'm trying to think of a good example. I recently had a conversation with somebody. And in this conversation, I brought up something that happened years ago that at the time I didn't act on. I was told this person was saying some not so nice things behind my back. Whatever. I didn't care then. I don't care now. And the reason I brought it up to this person was I was trying to get them to understand that despite that, and despite some other things, I was still loyally their friend, and I was still there for them no matter what. They took it as an attack. And got very upset, very hurt, and started lashing out on me. Now, if you ask this person, they'll tell you that, I was basically attacking them and saying that they were a liar or this or that or the other thing. And I never said any of those words. Never once did I speak any of those words. And this is a pretty standard reaction of most people. It's a form of projection. People do that all the time. It's kind of a function of the human psyche. The old adage of you can't truly know something about someone until you experience it with yourself. Okay, so a perfect example of that is the whole thing about you can't love someone until you love yourself. Well, it's very true. And in this instance, it's very natural for a person to automatically project their own experiences, perceptions, and motivations onto somebody else's behavior, because that's all you know. Until you experience a different motivator for that particular behavior, you can't identify or even recognize that somebody may be doing something for an entirely different reason. So we all have a bad habit of cherry picking things latching onto them and lashing out. Ultimately, this person is actually probably on a much deeper level upset about something else, some other form of rejection or self-worth or whatever, and they're taking it out on me. There's nothing I can do about that. My point is accountability. Try as I might, this person refuses to take accountability for how they feel. They continue to blame me for their current emotional state. I may have triggered the wound. I may have ripped the Band-Aid off. But it's entirely up to them as to whether or not they choose to heal. And I've talked about that in other videos too, about the type of healer I am. I trigger people, whether I want to or not. I have this particular reflective quality about me, where not only can I see right into somebody's heart and soul, a gift of discernment, it's also a curse, but I have a real bad habit of bringing out people's fears and insecurities. It's not even a bad habit, it just happens naturally. It's my energy. So people either love me or hate me. That doesn't mean that I'm responsible for where they're at, nor am I responsible for their wounds, or hurting them, or making them feel hurt. Most people, myself included, a lot of times it's just an automatic reaction. Because most of us live in a state of reaction instead of a state of creation. And that's the other advantage to taking accountability for everything in your life. Once you do, and you realize that you have the power to decide how you feel in every single moment, in every single breath, you slowly switch from a state of reaction to a state of creation. And that's when you really get into the flow and you really start to realize how much of your world you actually co-create with Source. You just do it on a subconscious level most of the time. Most people do anyway. Which is the whole point of the subconscious mind anyway. We'll get into that. I got another video for that. So, to sum up, accountability. Take accountability for where you're at. All of it. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and of course physically. That's how you get rid of the resentments. If you have a resentment, whether it's real or imagined, against somebody or against an institution or an event that happened in your life, ask yourself, what part did I play? Take ownership. Take responsibility. This person didn't break my heart. I allowed them to break my heart. And how did I allow them to do that? Well, because I exposed myself. I was vulnerable. I was this, I was that. I trusted them and they betrayed my trust. Okay. Maybe they did. Maybe you had an unrealistic expectation. I know that's something I used to suffer from, and I probably still do. It'll probably take me a long time to combat that one. I've talked about my self-worth and abandonment issues that I'm healing, and how I would self-sabotage situations, and specifically relationships, was I had a very, I'm not going to say unrealistic, but I had a very high expectation of how I expected that love to be reciprocated and returned. And when it didn't come back in the exact form, manner, and package that I expected, I would start to push away. emotionally, energetically. And I would eventually drive these people to look elsewhere to get whatever fulfillment they were originally getting from me. And then I would cry victim. That's accountability. I don't blame them. I did that. They were just reacting to my energy. Whether it was conscious or not doesn't really matter. Whatever their intentions or motivations were isn't the point. The point is, by me recognizing this self-sabotaging behavior and learning how to take accountability for it, and realizing that I had a big part to play in that. It takes two to tango. Well, don't get me wrong, there are instances, flat out, where people are just fucking mean. It happens, okay? But even in that scenario, it's entirely up to you as to whether or not you're going to allow that person to continue to hurt you and or affect you. There are people I know that unfortunately have been exploited most of their lives. And it's very sad. And I would love to save them. And I hope that maybe through these videos, maybe through other seeds I've planted, I can be an example of how they can escape that gilded cage they've put themselves in. So, accountability. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's actually very empowering. Liberating. Because you're no longer under the illusion of control. And you'll realize very quickly that most of those situations you definitely contributed to, if not created entirely on your own.